Welcome, everyone, to an episode of Cheese. I am your host, Jose Betancourt. With me, I have two very special guests. Well, hopefully they remain permanent hosts of the show, but they're two great guys. We have John, who was on the podcast before when we interviewed Jans, and I said the name correctly this time. How you doing, John?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. You're on video chat, and I keep looking at that nice blurry background. Blurry background. And I'm like, how did he get that? So is that your computer doing it?
I think this might be the nature of my laptop and Skype, because Jeffrey's background is nice and vocalicious.
He's like little by little, it started to blur out.
And I'm a little blurry. I feel a little blurry right now, so it's the mood. It's all the sheltering in place.
I guess it goes by mood. You know, the blurry you feel, the blurrier the background.
Right. Actually, it is a feature you can set with your pictures. So you've got it set by default probably to the blurry background.
Oh, there you go. Everyone's trying to mimic that, 35 millimeter f1.4.
That's right.
I think the important thing as we weather all this is that we can make out shapes and colors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good sign, though, that we can still do.
Very.
And then we have Jeff making his debut. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, great. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you were actually on the Fuji Love podcast at one time, so you're a celebrity.
Right.
So
well, I don't know about that, but I this is my second podcast, so I'm thankful for the opportunity. It's great to connect with you guys.
Yeah, it's been in the works for a while, and we're trying to get Matthew on.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's okay, because he's in Boston, so I don't know.
Right.
You know, he hasn't really responded in our chats, so I don't know if Matthew's being antisocial or what. But hopefully he's okay, and hopefully we'll get him on soon.
He's sheltering in place, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
or he could be roaming around Boston taking photos of because a lot of photographers on YouTube are actually telling people to be creative. And I don't know if you guys ever heard of Eric Kim.
Yes.
He does vlogging now, and he's always walking around in LA, and he states, hey, if you ever wanted to get into street photography, now's the time, because it's empty and you don't have to worry about the fear of, dealing with people, and focus on architecture, things like that. So I guess it's a good piece of advice, but just make sure you're not 6 feet within somebody's distance. So
yeah,
let's get into the whole crisis. Now, on YouTube, you can't say the name of the virus. So we're not going to say it, but everybody knows what's going on. We have a worldwide crisis going on that none of us, I'm pretty sure that none of us here have gone through in our life. So how are you guys dealing with it? Jeff, we'll go to you first. How are you dealing with this crisis as a human being, not as a photographer, as just regular human being like everybody else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. All of us have worked there other than essential personnel, but been asked to work from home. My wife also works there, so she too is working from home. Here in Tennessee, all the schools are shut until the 24th of April. So my daughter, who's a ninth grader, also is working from home. So I'm here in the office. My daughter and my wife are at the kitchen table, just trying to make things work in terms of school and keep the communication going. We've had to shift totally online at the university to help students naturally take classes, but also for faculty and staff to be able to work remotely. So it's a challenging time. You run to the store. A lot of things are not there. We're here all day cooped up. You want to get out. You want to get some air.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just really a kind of an eerie time for everybody. And so it's impacted us. I think you get a bit stir crazy being at home all day, but naturally you want to do that to be safe and protect not only yourselves and your family, but everyone else as well. So it's been a big change in terms of what we're doing. But thankfully we have tools that we can communicate and collaborate and work together with colleagues and other students and all of that. So that's really the main shift that we've had to do. But one of the challenges we had is how do you ramp up and do that in 7 days? You know, shift an entire university and that quickly. So there's been a lot of meetings and efforts, and what do you do about students and faculty and staff who don't have technology at home? I know that seems like that's an anomaly, but we have over 100 requests from students and 50 from staff who don't have either a laptop at home or Wi-Fi, and how do we help them? And then you can imagine all of that stuff was in demand. I mean, I talked with my rep at Dell, and he told me I can get you a laptop in 4 weeks, absolute minimum. So things like that just all play a part of what we're doing every day. So anyways, that's the impact to me personally and our family as well. So, but we're making do, and it's working.
Thankfully, I mean, I guess now more than ever, we can be grateful for the technology we have, even though it can distract us from interacting with other human beings. But I guess it's going to keep a lot of people sane. I know for me personally, even having all the nice little toys that I do have, I still get bored because we're locked in and we're basically forced to stay home. I think there's a mental aspect of being told that you need to stay home and then instinctively being like, I want to go out. So, John, what about you? How have you been handling everything?
Well, I'm a portrait and headshot photographer, and I haven't had any work in the last few weeks for obvious reasons. I'm actually at my parents' house. My father passed away a couple years ago. My mom's 84. So I transplanted myself a few years back from New England, where I was working as a corporate and editorial photographer. I had a career in newspapers, as you probably know from our earlier conversations. So I'm basically sheltering in place for my mom's sake, making sure she's okay. And she's a very vibrant senior citizen. So I don't really have too many concerns about her, but we're kind of isolating ourselves, at least for the time being, until we have a clear picture of what's going on. I think it's good to play it safe. But my heart goes out to some of you guys who are in much more densely populated environments, because no matter where we are, we have to think twice about our actions now. But I also think you were talking the web. I definitely think it's a great tool to bring us closer together in some ways, and in some ways not. So through my networks with other portrait photographers, we've been having chats and things like that with sizable groups of people, and it's kind of fun. You know, it's kind of like a slumber party where nobody wants to go offline after a while. We stay on.
Yeah, I could totally understand that because, you know, as much as you love your family, and that goes for every one of us, after a while you just want to hear or see different faces or voices. And that was what I was trying to, the message I was trying to give in my previous episodes was that for those of us who want to get into podcasting, it's another form of keeping others company that don't necessarily have a group of people to interact with online. It's kind of a harsh lesson, though, because I think from a human standpoint, it kind of puts a perspective into all the things that we worry about as far as technology and status quo. And at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. And this is a harsh reality where there's certain things that you can live life without. And we're finding that out the hard way. Like overeating, buying stuff we don't need. I'm guilty of buying lunch and breakfast every day at work, wasting money on that when I can easily do it at home. So it's an adjustment for everyone. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to teach us a certain lesson that we'll actually take with us for the rest of our days. So what about you, John? Like, is there anything that you learned through this that you feel is gonna stick with you?
I just think it's going to be a good history lesson, just like it was for some of our parents who grew up during the Depression and wartime and rationing, and just being more mindful about our resources and how we're spending our time with each other.
Yes.
And being grateful. at the same time for what we have. I think it's going to be kind of an equalizer for a lot of us, whether somebody has money or doesn't have money. My heart goes out to the people who don't have the resources.
Yeah.
And I think we're all feeling the pinch right now. And I think it's a good time to conserve and kind of retrench in that. I think we need to squeeze some lemons right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can get really down on what's going on, or we can pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, and learn new skill sets.
Yes.
So
totally
one of the
agree.
things I'm trying to hone are my retouching and color correction skills.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my photojournalism days, I did a lot of that stuff, but a lot of the post-production stuff was delegated to color text and that sort of thing. So in the years that I've been outside of newspapers, I've got to learn some of these things myself.
Try to develop
some
your own
ways,
style.
Develop my own style, and also make sure that I keep things consistent in a way so that the expectations are maintained for clients.
Yes, that's true, especially with clients. It's one thing to do it on your own and post them on Facebook, but when it comes to clients, you do want some consistency. So this way, I've heard photographers say, "Hey, you want somebody to look at your photo and be like, this was done by blah blah blah." Yes, okay, I'm going to hire this guy. I want something similar. So I learned that the hard way. What
and
about
I
you?
think a lot of us. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of us are getting emails from people in the photo industrial complex about what they can do in this time, this specific time based on, what's going on. And I think the bottom line is, if we're photographers and we do this for a living, even if we don't do this for a living, we got to present ourselves as a resource to other people. It's not really about us anymore. It's about how we can help mankind, because our visual skill sets, they're powerful tools. And if we can use them to bring people closer together, and become more knowledgeable about what's going on and how to cope with this, I think it's going to position us really well once we're out of this particular period of time.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, so I would concur with what John said. I think one of the things that's been striking to me is this is forcing us to learn how to communicate and collaborate in ways that maybe we haven't in the past. We have tools that make it available for us to do exactly what we're doing now. We can actually teach online. We can actually facilitate the processing of invoices and do electronic signatures and make things happen all virtually. And a lot of people, that's a big shift and adjustment for them. And if we weren't in these circumstances, when you propose those things, you get set in old ways. This is how we've always done it. Well, this is forcing us to do things in new and fresh ways and to think creatively about how we just go about our daily lives. So that's one residual effect of this, forcing faculty, in my case, to teach online. That's making them think, how do I communicate effectively with my students to be sure they're informed, have the content they need to facilitate exams and papers? All of that stuff may be familiar with many folks, but for others, that's like putting ice skates on. That's really an uncomfortable place. And so this situation, I think, is causing us to rethink how we communicate, collaborate, and work together, kind of thing. So that's in the general sense. On the photography end of things, it's been interesting. So I'm regular on Facebook like you guys are. I'm on Instagram. And while folks haven't been able to get out and take all the wonderful, amazing photos they normally can do because they're hunkering down and sheltering in place, I have been amazed at the creativity of people doing things around the house, or looking at just ordinary objects and things that they pass by every day and thinking creatively about how to present it and photograph it. And it's forcing you to be creative in a way that you wouldn't have been otherwise. And I've really enjoyed that. Naturally, there's lots of funny things that come. People are trying to make the most of a very difficult situation. But in terms of creativity, I have been struck at seeing some of the work that people are doing because of where they are and can't go beyond the scope of their property, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
it kind of reminds me. Absolutely. It reminds me of that Proust quote, the real journey of discovery is not seeking new places, but having new eyes.
Yeah. That's
great.
Yep, absolutely. And that is on full display. And as you stated, Jeff, from seeing images of people posting portrait shots of toilet paper and making a joke out of it. I saw one, he said when you're a sports photographer trapped at home and he's taking photos of his TV,
I saw
that was really funny. He has the monopod set up and everything. So
yeah, they're showing reruns of an old basketball game.
Yeah.
When he stands up taking pictures of his TV. I mean, that's sports photography at its best.
And yeah, it's inspiring because just when you think, okay, what can I do? What can I, how can I keep my creative juices flowing? Then you go online and you see what people are doing and you're like, okay, let me try something like that. And there are photos I've taken. I haven't posted them, but I've just been shooting photos of my wife and son interacting, or my wife working from home, or my son just working on videos on his laptop. I have a black curtain, and the other day I saw the lighting coming in from the curtain, so I took a nice, not a nice photo, but I just took a photo of it in black and white, and I was like, okay, let me just keep these, let me archive them. I've taken a few photos outside. I just posted one recently. So I'm trying to keep those juices flowing, and everybody's been doing the same thing, whether you're a photographer or podcaster. I mean, it's really beneficial to those of us who podcast or do YouTube videos because now we're home, we can work on the craft, and there are people who are just looking for content to watch because they have nothing but time right now. Mm-hmm. But photography, it's a very hands-on, and as John was talking about earlier, people are going to learn new ways now how to set up composition, deal with lighting, be a little more creative. So I guess there's a silver lining in all this. For some, there aren't, unfortunately, but for those of us who are still healthy, I guess, and still active, trying to keep ourselves busy, this has been a really, really interesting lesson in when you look at social media. Like a lot of people, like even Twitter, I hate Twitter, but I'm seeing creative things on Twitter. Unfortunately, I'm seeing videos of people licking toilet seats, but once you dig through all that junk, you see some pretty creative things as well.
Yeah.
But John,
it's interesting. Just if as photographers, we sort of have our approaches to subjects and things that we want to go and photograph, and whatever it be, whether it be street photography or cityscapes or landscapes or whatever. So in your mind, you think, I'm going to get my gear together. I'm going to go out and do a shoot. Well, in this case, we're kind of forced to be around the house, and in the back of your mind, you probably think, well, that's kind of boring. I'm around all this stuff all the time. But what it does is it forces you to think and see things that are ordinary and conventional and common to you every day, and say, oh my gosh, wow, what can I do to make this really an interesting subject matter? When I pass by, I walk by the kitchen or whatever it is. Now I've got to think in different ways about how to photograph that. So I think this is really tapping in. This scenario, I should say, is really forcing us or tapping into the creativity on our photography side of things, because we all have different things and subject matter that we like, but this is the ordinary stuff. And so when you have that in your mind, then you think, okay, wow, I pass by that. I see it all the time. Never even thought about photographing it. And now when I do, I want to see it in a very unique perspective and interesting way kind of thing. So
do you picture in your head when you're thinking that, is the voice Jan's or Tomasz? I can totally hear them. Now try this,
Yeah, it's a little bit of both,
Right.
I mean, it's interesting you say that. I mean, how many ways can you look at your toaster? I mean, what are you going to do? It's
and if you got one of those
whatever it is.
If you have one of those cool toasters where the bread literally jumps up, You could try to, use that fast shutter speed to capture the toast in midair. So what about you, John? Because you're a freelance photographer.
Yes.
I've managed to, just when I myself was beginning to get clients and make a few dollars with portraits and things of that sort, unfortunately this happened. Now this is your livelihood. So as you stated earlier, you've been interacting with other photographers in your situation. What have you been doing just to keep yourself sane? Because I could totally understand that that's something that's really weighing heavily on you because it's your livelihood.
Well, okay, so I can't get people in front of my camera. So what do? I plan on photographing my mom more.
Okay.
I plan on doing a bunch of selfies in my studio, getting
Nice.
all kind of things sort of locked in, but also experimenting with lighting. I'll probably take some self-portraits of me with a surgical mask on just to be whimsical.
Nice.
I think humor is important right now.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm also thinking about posting images to Instagram and Facebook of things that I overlooked in my editing processes. So maybe outtakes of people, maybe humorous outtakes of people. I'm going to reach out to some of these people just to make sure they're cool with it. Cause in many ways, I care more about people than I do photos. Sometimes, I really care about, representing people in ways they want to be represented. So,
and that means a lot. That means a lot to the client. That's
an offshoot of my photojournalism days. There were times where I didn't publish a photo just out of compassion.
I could imagine that being difficult, whereas it's your job as a photojournalist to get the most candid of shots, and then you making that decision not to post certain things.
And sometimes you have to think in utilitarian terms, though, too. So sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of that one person or few people. If it's newsworthy and you feel like it's going to make a difference and speak to people and maybe have sort of a preventative message in the photo, then maybe you have to sacrifice people's feelings sometimes. I see that playing out now with this situation. I think there's some documentary photography going on that you definitely have to get out, such as people partying on a beach. It might paint some of those people in a negative light, but we also have to create some cautionary tales every so often.
Exactly.
So that other people don't make mistakes. Because there's a lot at stake right now. So
absolutely.
I definitely think photography has a power right now that it might not have had a couple months ago.
Yeah. It's interesting, John, you say that. Yesterday I was in one of the groups I'm in. Somebody was encouraging people to get out and do documentary photography, and people were reacting very strongly negatively because of the nature of the situation. And his argument was, this is like wartime. It might not be conventional to go out and shoot in those scenarios in this situation, but we've got to capture these moments. And there was a really interesting debate that kind of broke out about that, even though it defied the either social norms or the decrees of a local city or whatever kind of thing. To capture that as a photographer was important, to be able to document what is actually happening kind of thing. So it really was an interesting discussion,
And I mean, as photographers and people in general, we always have to weigh the benefits versus the costs of doing a certain action. I think going outdoors right now, in some ways is a very healthy decision, as long as you keep your social distancing. But getting fresh air is good. I'm trying to go out every day and run. It's raining today, so maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Maybe I do a couple push-ups and call it a day.
You should do a before and after photo of before your push-ups and afterwards.
That's right. I think, the next podcast will show how ripped we are. Right?
Or not. Actually.
Yeah, or not. Yeah. My wife and I were joking around how big we're going to get when all is said and done,
Just to illustrate that, Jose, this is interesting for us. So the first case that broke here in Chattanooga was of a Episcopal priest. He had gone to a conference and contracted it. So and they actually named him on the news, which of course that's a violation of certain laws and regulations.
Yeah.
Having said that, people needed to know Episcopal priest is going to come in contact with a lot of people. Well, the second case was, even though no one said it, was his spouse who works at the university. And so now all the people at the university are going, did I have contact with this person? And you have this unknown that kind of ripples effect. And then on our IT team, we have folks who interacted with her and were in that office. And so what impact does that have? And so it cascades out kind of thing. And so I think the point you're making is, because you don't know, you really need to take the advice and heed the warnings and really do follow exactly what the officials are trying to say. But it's in the context of this unknown of what contact did I have, who might be impacted by it. You know, I have someone on my team who has a spouse who has a compromised immune system, you know, and so on and so forth kind of thing. And so it's very difficult to know. And the rumor mill goes with this too. I mean, these things run wild and lots of things are being said. I think it's just critical that we do follow exactly what we're being asked to do, because you just don't know who has had contact with an individual, and it's really important to be able
and that's
to.
The scary
and we need to assume that we all have it.
Right.
Jeff, how did you get into photography? Like, what was it that sparked your interest into photography?
Wow, great question. So I started back when I was in high school. I was very fortunate. I was in a program where I got out of school early, and I had to work, and I was getting paid quite a bit as a senior in high school. And I was fortunate that worked out, but I spent all my money on camera gear. I bought a Minolta X700. I had lenses. I had a lighting kit. I just spent every penny I had. And I used to take friends out to this park that had a little waterfall and a split rail fence, and I'd prop them up against the fence and try to figure out I didn't know what I was doing at all, kind of thing. And I didn't know what all the dials did. I just took rolls and rolls and rolls of film. You remember that? You take a roll of film, you'd send it off, and a week later you'd hope one of them turned out decent.
Exactly, yeah.
That's kind of how I started. And my interest grew from there. When I was in college, I worked on the college newspaper and learned about darkroom techniques and all that sort of stuff. So my funniest thing to happen, it's not funny at the time, but pretty embarrassing. I had a friend, and he had he was in a duet. The two of them sang, and they said, would you do the album cover for us? And I said, sure. So we did it at the college campus, and I roamed around campus, and I took loads and loads and loads of photos of them. And it was really a rush job. And I got to the end, and I realized I didn't put any film in the camera. So that's how it goes, man. So anyways, those are the early days when I started, but I've always had a budding interest in photography. I think it's probably that creative outlet that I've always enjoyed doing. That interest is waned off and on, but certainly over the last 10, 12 years, it's increased immensely. So I've been doing it since high school, and I'm 53 now, and so it's always been a part of my life. And now we have tools that we can display and share and interact that we didn't have way back when. Yeah. So I love it, and it's my passion in addition to my family, outdoors, and camping and all that stuff that we love to do. But this is the one thing I continue just to keep coming back to again and again. It keeps me grounded and sane. So
and, it's the reason why the three of us met.
That's right, absolutely.
And John, we know that you made a living with photography. So when did you decide that this was the living you wanted to make?
Well, as an undergraduate, I was an economics and German double major. So the logical conclusion to this was to become a photojournalist. But even before that, I was 8 years old, and I was looking at the back of a Captain Crunch cereal box, and there was this deal to get a Kodak Instamatic camera for $2.50 and a couple box tops. So
nice.
I bid on that hook and waited for the little package to come in the mail.
That's great.
It did, and I realized so every time I popped in those 126 cartridges, there were repercussions economically. And I mean, when you shoot film, you learn to conserve eventually. digital, we have this luxury of, infinite images. But I like to experiment. I used to climb trees with that little plastic box of a camera and do aerial shots long before there were DJI Phantoms. And I remember duct taping the camera to the handlebars of a BMX bike and jumping ramps and getting underneath my brother as he jumped over me.
Wow,
be on
nice.
my back. So, this was like over 40 years ago. Nothing special, nothing fantastic, because, these cameras, you really didn't have a lot of creative control to them. It was basically an F8 and be there situation.
Wow.
So, if you flash forward after college, I wanted to do something a little more creative. So I studied advertising and marketing. And through that, I took a photography class. And initially it was intimidating. Like Jeffrey said, there are all these bells and whistles on these things, these knobs, what do they do? And, I had to learn how to use those, and that sparked a fire that never burned before. So within about a year or so, I built up a portfolio so I could get into Syracuse University's, photojournalism program. And, within a year and a half of that, I became an intern at the Hartford Courant, which is a big paper up in Connecticut. So I was kind of lucky with that trajectory, how quickly it happened.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I'm grateful for the instructors and the people at that newspaper who really helped me develop.
And don't forget Captain Crunch.
And Captain Crunch. Captain Crunch was
the...
really instrumental. Yeah.
Had a big impact on it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to have good leaders around you.
That's fantastic.
Good to have him at the helm.
So that explains why at the Fuji Love workshop, because I complimented you on your agility and your intensity, like jumping in there, getting really low, running after clowns and everything like that. So this explains basically that you've never lost that, because it's something that you did as a kid, climbing trees, jumping on, off ramps and stuff. So you've always had that keen creativity where it was a little, not unorthodox, but it was an extra step that a lot of us can't do or refuse to do, just based on, like I would never run after a clown because I'd lose my breath. But yeah, that explains a lot, and you haven't lost that, so that's awesome.
I like moving.
Yeah.
I move a lot faster than I speak.
Do you do the same during your photo shoots, your portrait shots?
Sometimes. Headshots, it's a little more static of a situation. So the subject is doing a lot more moving than I am, in microscopic ways with micro expressions and body movements and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm a Rolling Stone. I like to move around, and I think one thing that feeds what we do is I think a lot of us have an insatiable curiosity about the world. Mm-hmm. So photojournalism fed that really well, because every day was a box of chocolates. Every day was different.
Wow.
You had no idea what was about to happen. Sometimes you did, but a lot of times the news broke and you had to kind of stop what you're doing and go off in a completely different direction. So I guess that kind of infused my photography and my alacrity to a large degree.
Is there, off the top of your head, a situation where you had to take a photo of an accident or just anything in general that really made an impact, whether it was a good impact or a negative impact? And is there anything you could think of off the top of your head, like one particular instance?
I've seen a lot of things that I don't want other people to see, and they were never published. But I think definitely being an empathetic person has really helped me a long way. And in some ways, it's probably deprived me of some images that other people have taken. But there was one situation when I was an intern at the Hartford Courant where, it was Mother's Day, and they told me to go out and find a feature, like a slice of life that kind of tied in to Mother's Day. So good luck with that, right? I mean, sometimes you go out, it's like street photography. You go out and you don't know what you're going to get. And you do your best to go with the flow. And there was this one situation where I was passing the cemetery and I saw this couple leaning over a grave, and I kept on driving because they were about 50 yards off the road. And, you know, I think we've all had those experiences where we see something and we don't stop in our tracks.
Yeah.
Because
we
weigh the
like,
benefits
no.
versus,
Yeah.
exactly. We weigh the benefits, against the costs. And, that's the economist in me.
Yeah.
But a quarter mile down the road, I decided to do a U-turn and go back and just kind of slowly measure up on the situation with a long lens. And I got some images, and then I introduced myself. And I heard an interesting story. You know, it was basically this gentleman's mother had just died. And there wasn't even a headstone. They couldn't afford the headstone, but there was like simple marker there, and he was holding this woman really closely, and as they were leaning over the site, and so I heard this backstory, and it was a really touching image. That it was just like very emotional, and it made you appreciate motherhood. It's and the power of photography too, because I think in some ways we take pictures of our loved ones while they're around, and subconsciously we're staving off an eventual loss.
Yes.
We're taking pictures for a reason, to preserve, to document, to validate human lives. And then when people are gone, we appreciate them that much more. So in the moment of making these images, we didn't initially realize the full potential or power of them until much, much later.
Exactly.
And we think about these things. We take, especially now, we're taking pictures of our families, maybe, and everybody's complaining. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like, but they're grateful you had those photos down the road.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because nothing's forever. And so to me, that's the power of photography. So I digressed there a little bit.
That's good.
But the story, I come back to the newspaper with this image, and the editors love it. And then one of the editors gets this call from this irate woman.
Oh,
and
really?
This woman ends up being the estranged wife of the man who was in the photo, and that the woman who was with the man was somebody that he's now with.
Oh, man.
And
so it had nothing to do with the actual death of the mother. It was a whole marital conflict that you guys were in between.
Exactly. So it brought on, there was this whole new layer of information. So this woman who had passed away was the mother-in-law of the woman who was calling the editors. And so the woman got patched over to my phone in the photo department, and she's basically told me, I heard what you did and I don't like it. And if my mother-in-law knew, that this photo existed, she'd roll over in her grave. So please, can you ask your editors not to run the photo? And I can't be committal because I'm not running the show at the newspaper.
Yeah.
My heart is being wrenched in that moment. And I basically say, do you mind if I get back to you in about 5 or 10 minutes? I just have to have a discussion with my editors, because I'm taking what you're saying very seriously. And, so I was trying to be as tactful as possible. And the editor said, John, this is a great photo. And it also speaks to the love that this man had for his mother, as well as the possible love that this other woman has for this deceased mother. And, so they ended up running the photo, and lo and behold, the next day I get a call from a couple people. Most of them were compliments, but, that their estranged wife, wasn't too happy.
Yeah.
So.
And isn't it amazing how we're going to use you as an example? You take this amazingly touching photo that totally goes and it stays within the article that or the assignment that you were given, and then you're getting a bunch of compliments, but that one person hits you the most. That one negative impact touches you the most.
And it continues to hit me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, as a documentary photographer, you have to realize that life involves suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
my hope is that that man and that probably now divorced wife are in a better place, that there was a reason for all these happenings, and hopefully people learn and grow from them.
Yes.
And that's life. So, but it's still a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. And plus, the fact that she did not have a tombstone, this was a nice way to honor her by having her in the article. So that was the big picture, no pun intended, that the wife should have taken, okay, things are what they are, but in honor of my mother-in-law, this is a beautiful situation. Instead, she made a big deal out of it. But the point I was trying to make about that one negative comment, or, well, in today's terms, it's a comment, but in your situation was an actual human being talking to you over the phone, and you're dealing with all the emotions, hearing them for yourself, whereas nowadays everything is via social media, so all we're dealing with is text. But even
we are, and I think social media can magnify people's feelings sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like there are things that we say on social media that we wouldn't necessarily say person to person.
Exactly. Right. And all it takes is a few bad apples to spoil. Let's say when this podcast goes up, we can get 50 positive reviews, and then just one negative review will be the one that'll have
Sticks
most of us like, oh, why? So as someone who has been podcasting for a very long time, I learned to be a little, not immune because I'm only human, but I've learned to deal with that a lot better. And it actually helped me out in the real world. But in your situation, I could only imagine how that must have, and you stated that it still impacts you, and because it's a different universe. We're reading it via text, we can escape it, but when you're hearing it over the phone, and now you're caught in the middle, and you're like, what the heck, I could only imagine that being a total, it had a question like whether this was something you wanted to continue doing, which comes with the territory, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
You can't please all the people all the time.
No, you can't. You
that's one takeaway. That haters are going to hate. People are always going to be unsatisfied. But no matter what, I think you have to be empathetic. You have to remember your humanity.
The fact that you went up to them and introduced yourself, that was great.
When we were at the Fuji Love conference, I got mugged at the Port Authority. So
really,
when I was taking pictures, yes, I apparently was in somebody's space and they smacked me. And there were police officers nearby, and they said, "Do you want us to file a report? Do you want us to make an arrest?" Because the guy was still there, but I think he was under the influence of something, and I needed to get back with you guys. And I also was an empathetic human being. That this person obviously was probably down on their luck, and I just wanted to move on, and I did apologize. He tried to pull the camera from my hands and to see what I had just done, and I said, "No, you can't do that."
It's crazy because I remember you mentioning a confrontation. I don't remember knowing that he smacked you.
Yeah, he smacked me upside the head.
Now this was
it wasn't like I didn't sustain a concussion or anything. It was only a flesh wound. So
because this was a week after my head injury. So hearing this is wait a minute, I kind of remember this, but I remember you, because when you told it to me, well, I think you told us as a group, but I remember you made a joke out of it, so maybe that's why it just totally went over my head. But wow,
that's the first time anything like that had ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Wow. And thankfully it wasn't, anything worse.
Yeah.
No, I just wish back then people were more mindful of social distancing, because that might not have happened.
Yeah. Somebody made a comment that this could actually become like the norm with this whole social distancing, not where people are going to stay home, but just giving each other space. Because that's one thing that really aggravates me, especially in New York. You don't have space. And I'm not a small dude, so for some reason I always attract, and I could always sense like, okay, there's reasonable space in this particular train. This person is going to come really close to me, and it happens. It happens in restaurants. It's just something that just happens to me. So maybe this becomes a thing where people learn to respect and give people a little bit of space instead of just being on top of each other, because it's not healthy, number one, and it could be aggravating.
Yeah.
I see there have been other situations in other parts of the world, and I've noticed in traveling into other parts of the world, I remember even back in, I had an assignment where I ended up in Croatia, and as I was leaving Zagreb, there were people from other parts of the world that were wearing masks, and this was back in 2007. So I think there are other parts of the world where people have been mindful for quite some time about social distancing and face protections and things like that, because this has always gone on. I mean, when European colonists came to the Americas, they introduced a whole bevy of pathogens to tribes and cultures, and it decimated populations. So
yes, it did.
I think this has always gone on. It's just now we're more knowledgeable about exactly how these things happen and how to prevent them.
It's almost as if nature is saying, look, guys, we'll give you one more chance. You better learn from this one. Yeah. So before we leave, Jeffrey, any particular photos or situation where it really impacts you, something that you can take with you and either be proud of or a little bit embarrassed of while in your photography stage?
Oh man, that's a great. I don't have the background that John has, where he's at the intersection of some of these really ethical, very. I'm a landscape person, so it's me with a rusty car out in the woods trying to figure out how to capture it in a meaningful way, kind of thing. But that said, every once in a while you're out there and you take a photo and you think, yeah, that felt good. You might chimp and have a look on your screen or whatever. But because I don't shoot people that often, sometimes, obviously family or friends for various things, but in the main, I don't have those same kinds of moments. But you do have photographs where you capture a mood. Why is it when you're walking along and you're framing something in your mind and you try to capture it, and sometimes you go, yeah, I got it, kind of thing. So I think all of us do that with all sorts of scenes, whether it's on the street or documentary or landscaped or cityscapes or whatever they are. You try to capture what you're picturing in your mind, kind of thing. And you have those aha moments. And so it's not really a parallel to John and directly to the same idea of what he was sharing. But for me, it's more of those kinds of things. I do like thinking about the world in different ways, though. I often say, every day there's probably, maybe not right now, but 100,000 pictures taken of the Eiffel Tower. How do I take one that's a little bit different than everybody else, from the same perspective, the same place? How do I see it with new eyes and capture it and present it in such a way? So that crosses my mind a lot in terms of when I try to take a shot. And, I think the other thing is one of my compositional things. It's always, I like symmetry. I like leading lines. Those are things that all the time when I see something that just captures my attention. And, so those are the kind of photographs, if you will, that I think, try to emulate on a regular basis. And I have those aha moments where I feel like, I captured that. Sometimes when you get back and you look at it, I didn't so much. You think you might have, but sometimes you do. And so, that's just a general response to, again, John's very different what he presented, but, that's the kind of work that I have done historically. So.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier said than done when it comes to getting that composition just right.
Yeah.
Because you see it one way, and then when you see the final results, you're like, I missed it.
I missed it.
So you got to appreciate those artists, those photographers who can.
That's right. Absolutely.
Just get it just in a way where, there's 1,000 photos of a particular structure, but you see a few that are like, how did they do that?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And it didn't do anything special, so and that's the great thing about photography. John was talking about the power of photography, and the great thing about photography is that all of us can take a photo of the same thing.
Yeah.
But we're each going to have a different perspective, and we can appreciate it. So it's if you're into photography in any sense, like if you're curious or podcasting, whatever, just do it. Now you have the time, you have the resources. I had someone hit me up on Instagram. He showed me a photo of a Canon camera that his wife bought. It's one of those that has a integrated lens and that extends to about 400 millimeters or something. I looked it up for him, sent him some links of reviews, and then he hit me back. He's like, we just got the M50, the Canon M50 instead. I'm like, wise choice, So, So, it feels good when people hit you up and ask you about photography, because that means, number one, they think of you as the photographer, and it gives you an opportunity to just share your knowledge with someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't be greedy. Share your knowledge.
I agree. I think a rising tide raises all ships. Mm-hmm. I think the more we can share with people and be a resource in general to people, I think the better position, like I said, we're going to be on the other side of this thing that we're going through right now.
Yes. Yeah. And the great thing about it is that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, everything is back to normal. You're more educated.
Yeah.
So I know I tell people to read and, find ways to keep busy. I don't read as often as I should, but educate yourself. Like I've gone back doing similar things that you are doing, John. I'm going back looking at old photos, and then I want to re-edit them on Capture One, because Capture One for Fuji can handle the files better.
Absolutely, and that's another thing I'm learning, by the way.
Capture
with
One?
This downtime. Yeah, Capture One, especially with tethering to the camera.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to get into is tethering. So really quick, John, you have the GFX 50S. Any progress with that? I know the last time we spoke, you were getting acquainted with it. I believe you still have the 65 millimeter 1.4.
I have a Medicon.
Yeah, right?
The Medicon 65
and the 110.
And, the 110, and that suits my purposes for now. And Fuji has all kinds of good deals going on right now. The 50 looks kind of appealing, but I'm thinking maybe I go in the wider direction, just to spread out my focal lengths.
Yes, that's what I did. I got a 28 millimeter PC lens. That's a Nikon, so I adapted so it becomes, I think, a 21 millimeter on the GFX. So that's pretty wide enough. So as you, similar to you, that was my theory. Have something wide, something in the mid range, and then something somewhat telephoto-ish with the 110. Unfortunately, I had to sell my 100 to 200, which I liked a lot, But when I saw the opportunity to get that 100, that 110, I mean, I had to jump on that. That lens is just magnificent.
I think if I was stuck on a desert island with one lens, that would be the lens I have, just because it's good for portraiture. But at the same time, if I was stuck on a desert island, how many people would I have to shoot? So that brings us back to the original conversation of self-isolation, right?
Well, at least you'll have the wildlife, you know. Ask a few baboons or you know, some lions or something. Hey, let me take a photo of you.
There you go.
So John, you still with the XH1? Any plan now that Fuji has come out with all these cameras? Any plans to upgrade, or are you just going to play it cool? I mean, Jeff, sorry.
Oh, I thought you sorry, yeah. So, yeah, I shoot with the XH1. Of course, the rumor mill has been rife for a long time that there's going to be an XH2. And in the interim, they've come out with an XT3 and an XT4. I'm holding out for the XH2. However, I will tell you that the 100V that just came out is really caught my eye. I definitely am having would love to have one of those. You know, it's a fixed lens, it's an f2, and it's just hot off the press. It looks extremely fun camera to have. So, but all this is hit. I'm just kind of holding out right now to see what happens, kind of thing. But I've got a variety of lenses. I am partial to zooms. I get it about primes. I know people are very loyal to primes, and I understand why. But my workhorse is my 18 to 135 because it's so flexible and versatile. I use it all the time for all sorts of stuff. But the lens I probably have the most fun with, that probably have resonated with the kind of photography that I love, is the 10 to 24. Shooting wide and really capturing stuff and seeing things from that perspective has been very exciting. So that's where I'm at the moment. I would love, this is sort of an aside, but it ties into, I watched a fantastic review. Actually, I've watched a number of them on the X100V that just came out, and people were so creative in how they put sort of a vlogging review video. They actually make it sort of high quality. I haven't a clue how to do that, and I would love to aspire to figure out how they went about that. So there's an art in being able to sandwich images with video, with voice, with music, and all of that. I wouldn't have a clue, but I would love to learn how, and it's something I'd like to explore.
I'll tell you what, as someone who does video as well, once you learn how to edit a photograph, you'll be able to edit a video and audio. It's almost the same.
Well, that's good. Concept. There's hope for me yet then.
Exactly. And I'll tell you one thing about the 100V. Yeah. When I went to a photo convention, and I picked up the 100V, and because I've been using the Fuji GFX 50R, it felt like I was holding those fake cell phones you see at the mobile stores, I felt like I was holding a fake camera because it was so small, so light, and I was like, how does all that power fit into that tiny body? Yeah. And a friend of mine was with me. He starts laughing. He goes, "You look like you're holding a piece of gum. That's how small it looks in your hand." But it's amazing. The video capability, of course, the photo sensor, the lens. It's something that I've been looking at. But then again, I'm so fixated on my GFX 50R that I'm like, when am I going to use it? Because the XH1 is a phenomenal camera as well. So if you want to do video, you have a great video camera.
I know, it's a fantastic camera. It's just ideal. It's how I got into Fuji. I mean, it's the only camera Fuji I've ever had, but before I had a full frame, I had a Pentax, and it's so the hybrid style. It's a little bit larger, just in terms of ergonomics in your hand, but it's a real workhorse, a fantastic camera. I couldn't be happier with it. So, but the X100V is something that's small. You can slip it in your pocket. It's interesting to see, as you said, what a powerhouse it is with all the features and tools and technology that's in it. It has the capability of producing some incredible images and video as well. So I have my eye on that at the right time. We're just going to see economically how things all pan out here. And then hopefully next year, if the rumor mill is true, there'll be an XH2. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's supposed to have a high megapixel sensor and be aimed at sports. So who knows?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
So we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate that you guys hopped on with me. John, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
My Instagram is John Clarke Russ, spelled JohnClarke, Russ. And my website is johnclarkeruss.com.
All right. And you have that awesome profile photo that that famous portrait photographer, I forgot his name, and I'm saying he's famous, but
Peter Hurley.
Yes, Peter Hurley. Yeah.
I came back from his Headshot Mania conference in Las Vegas last month before all this madness descended.
Yeah. He's a good salesman, I tell you that much. He's a really good pusher.
He's a good human being too.
Yeah. Former model, got into photography. I think he uses a Hasselblad, I think. I saw an old video.
He used to use a Hasselblad. He's using Canon gear now because he's an explorer of light. But I mean, people like him point to the fact that everybody has a different approach. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating to see how you, Jeffrey, or how you, Jose, operate with a camera in your hands. Everybody is different.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes it so exciting. And so this downtime that we have, it's kind of cool to see what other people are doing too.
Yeah. Don't assume that there are rules. A lot of people will tell you on different forums or social media sites that you must follow the rules of photography. There aren't any rules. So I guess the only rule I would recommend is be genuine when you're showing your photos. Don't follow a trend. Just do something original, share it. People will give you their honest opinion. Jeffrey, where can we find you?
Yeah, so my last name is Wetherill with no A, so Wetherrill. And playing on the last name, my photography is called Weather Snaps Photography. And so if you go to weathersnaps.com, that's my site that displays my images. On Facebook and Instagram, I'm very active on both, and Flickr. It's Weather Snaps Photography. So Wether Snaps, Weather Snaps Photography. That's where you'll find my stuff. As I said, I'm active regularly in and out of Facebook and Instagram and Flickr all the time, and have my site. So you can reach me at weathersnaps@gmail.com. So. And
people can also buy prints.
They can indeed.
The one thing I enjoy about how you handle your photography is that somehow you must have this data, like a hard drive full of your own photos, because you're constantly and consistently posting photos, and you have a plan. You usually have a theme around your photos. So I really like that. I really enjoy that.
That'd be an interesting discussion for a future topic. If you're interested, I'd love to sort of hear what you guys do and how you approach all that, because having a plan and figuring that out, what works for you. Everybody's got to do something different, as opposed to, the reason I say that is because I get a lot of inquiries about that people are curious about how should I approach this whole topic. And, I offer what I do, but it's not one size fits all, but I think that'd be a fun topic to discuss at some point in the future.
Well, I think maybe next week works. I mean, What do you think, John?
I think I might have some free time on my hands.
There you go.
Yeah, I got to check my calendar.
There you go.
All right, guys. So everyone stay safe, stay inside, but be as creative as you can, and please share them on your social media. Hopefully you follow us. And John, Jeffrey, thank you very much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll be talking to you guys next week.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.